Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Great to see some familiar faces coming in. Um, so lovely to see new ones as well. I'll just give it a second to make sure that everyone's jumped through from the waiting room, and then we'll kick off. Excellent. I think that's everyone's come through. So welcome to Your Right to Vote, a CPActive lived experience lab. Here we will connect, share, and learn from the lived experience of our community. Thank you for joining us here this evening. Connecting and meeting to share like this is what our oldest living culture would have done in corroboree. We want to recognize the traditional peoples of this continent whose land was stolen nearly 250 years ago. I would like to acknowledge the traditional landowners from where I am joining you here in our national capital, Canberra, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people. We would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where CPActive was born, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us here tonight and across this country. I invite you to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land you are joining from in the chat. So, who am I and why am I in front of you tonight for this lived experience lab? I'm Luther, your host, and as my grandmother had once described me, I'm a young and frisky 30-something-year-old. But more seriously, like many of you, I am a proud person with cerebral palsy and a member of the CPActive Steering Committee. I am an advocate based here in the heart of federal politics in Canberra. What I care about most is bringing people together like we are tonight. I believe as human beings, we all have a desire to connect and belong, and that by building community like we are now, we empower each other. I truly believe there is strength in difference, and that disability brings power and resilience, dares us to change the world in our own way. And CPActive gives us a space to do this. With the election now called, we will be voting sometime between now and the 3rd of May. So what is it all about? At its simplest, voting is about having your say. It's your chance to have your say over the future, the environment, the welfare, the NDIS, defence, and so much more of Australia. The politicians we elect on the 3rd of May will set the direction of Australia for the following 3 years and well beyond. But that's enough from me. Let's meet tonight's guests, who are experts in all things federal elections. So a quick whip around of our guests joining us tonight. Fresh from the Australian Electoral Commission, Lachlan Moore. The superhero that we all needed a comic book about growing up, Stephanie Travers. Welcome, Stephanie. And the biggest disability advocacy diva this side of the Pacific, Laura Pettinuzzo. Welcome so much to our three guests this evening. And look, let's kick off and get right into it, because you're not here to listen to me. You're here to hear from these experts who have come along to share their lived experience and knowledge with you all. So let's start with Lockie, or Lachlan Moore. Lachlan is a political nerd / tragic who enjoys bushwalking and binge watching Kath and Kim. Lockie grew up in Launceston, Tasmania, and studied political science at ANU in Canberra. He now works in the postal voting team at the Australian Electoral Commission and is incredibly excited for election night. Lockie was lucky enough to find the wonderful CPActive community last year via the Young Changemakers program and has recently become a CPActive champion. Now, Lachlan, to steal a line from an advocate idol of mine, Ellie Demarchelier, talk sexy to me and tell me all about accessible voting and enrolment.
Thank you, Lisa, for that wonderful introduction. Um, am I all good to go with the PowerPoint up? Um, awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. So, as Luther indicated before, and as you're probably well aware of now, the federal election will be held on Saturday, the 3rd of May. This is your chance to have your say and ensure your voice is counted. Um, Voting in Australia is compulsory, and I think that's one of the really cool features of our democracy. We recognise that voting is a right, but it is also a responsibility. So when you go to vote, you'll have to fill out two ballot papers. One will be a green ballot paper where you'll vote for your local representative for the House of Representatives, and then another longer white ballot paper, and issuing Victoria or New South Wales, it might be a bit like a toilet roll, a very, very long ballot paper to select multiple representatives to represent your state or territory in the Senate. That's right. So I work at the AEC, and the AEC is the independent body that runs federal elections in Australia. We don't support any political parties or candidates. Our job is to facilitate elections so every Australian can have their say. And the AEC offers several different options for accessible voting, including specific support to ensure people with disabilities are supported to vote. Um, so accessibility at polling places. So I'll talk a bit more about this in the next slide, but basically you have multiple ways of voting. The AUC offers multiple options to ensure accessibility, but most of you have probably voted on election day before, and so first I'm going to talk about how we make voting at a polling station on election day accessible. So when you go into um, the polling station, you can ask for help to complete your ballot paper, and this can be a friend or a family member or a support worker or even someone working at the IEC as a polling official. You can bring material into the polling place to assist yourself voting. So sometimes for me, I find it a bit overwhelming being in the polling place and remembering everyone I want to vote for, so I might write it down in advance and refer back to that. The AEC also provides Auslan interpreting services at all polling places, and if required, text to speech pens and hearing loops are available at one polling place in every electoral division, and more info about that will be published on the AEC website closer to polling day. The main takeaway is the AEC staff are here to be helpful. So if you see someone at a polling place, probably with a purple vest on, they're there to help you. That's so alternative options to voting on election day. So if you can't vote on polling day or will find a different option easier to access, we offer a range of different options. You can do a pre-poll vote. So the pre-poll voting booths are open in business hours for 2 weeks before polling day. You can apply for a postal vote. So uh, this will mean a postal vote is mailed to your house and you'll get some instructions and fill it out and per those instructions and then send it back to the IEC via your local post office or post box. I've included a link to apply to a postal vote. With the AEC also visits hospitals and residential facilities. And if you are blind or have low vision, there's also a telephone voting option. That's all. So practice writing. If you like to just check your confidence in making sure you know how to complete a ballot paper to make sure your vote counts, I've included a link to the IEC website where you can practice voting using this online tool. So this might be a helpful resource to just get your confidence up before voting. Yeah, and happy voting, everyone. I often call this time electionmas, like Christmas, because I think it's a really precious and exciting time that we all get to have our say and be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lachlan, and really appreciate all that excellent information you've put in there for us from the Australian Electoral Commission on voting and how to vote. I just have one quick question for you, Lachlan, before we move on to our next speaker. Um, when does the window to enroll to vote close? Because I know it's very soon.
That is a very good question. I forgot to put that in. So to vote, you need to make sure you're enrolled and you have until Monday next week to do this. And to check your enrollment is up to date, you can visit the ASC website. I will literally just Google enroll to vote and it should pop up. Thanks, Luther.
No, thank you, Lachlan. Really appreciate all that helpful information and making sure we're all going to get everything done in time. So thank you so much, Lachlan. Fantastic to have your input and everything there. Our next speaker for this evening will be Stephanie Travers. So Stephanie, or Steph, is a disability advocate, consultant, and public speaker with lived experience of spina bifida and psychosocial disability. They run an independent disability advocacy service and co-founded Voices for Central Coast Disability. A longtime activist, Steph has won a landmark disability discrimination case at 12 and has since fought for disability rights, policy reform, and systematic accessibility. They are a proud the proud PWDA director advocating for inclusive, transparent government engagement. Steph, tell us whose policies are slapping this election and whose door do I need to go and knock on up at Australian Parliament House?
Thanks, Luther, for that warm introduction. It makes me sound way more accomplished than I am. Unfortunately, I don't have a PowerPoint, so you'll just have to look at my face and listen to my words. And thank you for the invitation to speak today. I am coming from Darkajung country on the Sydney Central Coast. And as Luther said, I am a person with spina bifida. I'm a wheelchair user, NDIS participant and advocate, and I'm here as a board director and secretary for People with Disability Australia, or PWDA for short. Those of you unfamiliar with our work as an organisation, we are the National Cross Disability Rights Advocacy Organisation, led by and for people with a disability. We are non-profit, non-government, and non-partisan, dedicated to advancing the rights, economic security, and full inclusion of Australians with disability. We were established in 1981, and we are the proud national peak body for disability, as well as the peak body for LGBTQIA, people with disability. Our work is grounded in a human rights framework, and our tagline sums up who we are, a voice of our own. So a voice that is led by and for people with a disability. So if none of you are members, then we welcome you to be members as well. This election, we have clear priorities because they are the priorities of our members and the broader disability community. Over the last 12 months, through consultation and feedback from our members, We have refined our advocacy priorities for this election to 7 key areas. Ensure secure funding for the NDIS, funding nationally consistent foundational supports, which are essential and not optional for the nearly 5 million Australians not on the NDIS, raising the rate of income support above the poverty line, making housing accessible, so mandating those accessible housing standards for all states, ensuring disability representation in government, so that is a Minister for Disability Inclusion, protecting our human rights, which is the Disability Discrimination Act reform and a Human Rights Act, and supporting diversity in the public sector. So that is co-design and engaging the public service so people with a disability have opportunities for employment. So let's talk about what each party is promising. The Greens have made commitments that align well with some of our priorities. They propose making ADHD and autism assessments free under the Medicare schedule and establishing local free healthcare clinics across the country, staffed by professionals including GPs, nurses, psychologists, so multidisciplinary. They want to triple the bulk billing incentive for everyone with a Medicare card, which would make healthcare more accessible and affordable for people with disability. My area is one of those where we do not have a single bulk billing GP that is available and doesn't have closed books. So this is definitely needed. They've also pledged to abolish mutual obligations for those on DSP and job seeker, and harmful compliance frameworks within income support, which would reduce penalties for people in receipt of these payments. And we do know people with disability are overrepresented on job seeker. The Greens are also advocating for greater inclusion and recognition of disability rights. They have pledged to establish the Election Access Fund to help people access elections, and have committed to creating a Disability Pride Week supported by the government. Their plans include fully funding a transition to inclusive mainstream employment, so reducing segregated employment, and investing in disability awareness training for health professionals. They support the establishment of a federal disability minister, like we do, and a Department of Disability Services. Having a minister in cabinet and a dedicated department is part of our election platform because it's so important to not have a patchwork across multiple portfolios. This infrastructure would mean that we aren't invisible, and when it comes to policies for housing, employment, and education, they are all combined under one department. Labor has made some promises. They have also agreed to triple the bulk billing incentive, restoring bulk billing to 11 million Australians. Their policies on Medicare, mental health centres, and endometriosis and pelvic pain clinics were very promising, but we need to ensure that these services are accessible to people with disability. Labor has also committed to increasing fundings for hospitals by 1.7 billion and providing cost of living relief through measures such as expanding the network of urgent care clinics and making medicines cheaper. They also are providing $150 off your electricity bills, but this only goes until December, and there is no consensus of whether this would go past December and into January. The coalition has outlined its 12 priorities, which include delivering healthcare and building a stronger economy. The coalition have committed to increase their number of mental health sessions to 20 again, and an additional $400 million youth mental health investment, which is much needed. They have committed to address cost of living pressures by increasing the fuel excise for 12 months. Again, this is 12 months. We don't know what exists outside of that. And supporting economic growth and implementing policies aimed at improving employment opportunities in the economy in general, not disability specific. So their plans around disability specific issues remain very vague. While they emphasize economic growth and cutting costs, it is essential that their policies directly address the needs of people with a disability, particularly around NDIS and foundational supports, and they have not committed to further cuts across those. But we also must be vigilant across all parties and all platforms. As PWDA has recently pointed out, there are significant gaps in commitments from both major political parties. The federal budget has largely left people with a disability invisible, with critical measures either missing or insufficient. For example, disaster relief and housing, we were missing completely, and domestic family violence, it was a missed opportunity where we are overrepresented. Cuts to the NDIS workforce are on the table from both sides, which could undermine essential supports and exacerbate the pressure on a system which is already under strain. We are also deeply concerned about proposals to cut the public service from the coalition by 41,000 people, increasing Centrelink staff and ensuring quicker responses to those who rely on its services are critical. And also that knowledge base within the NDIS of having disability knowledge to be able to do plans, that is definitely needed and vital for frontline services. We cannot accept piecemeal commitments or vague promises from any side. We need action. We need funding models that are genuinely co-designed with people and led by our community, not just consulting or focus groups. We need foundational supports to be funded consistently across the whole country, not subject to which postcode you live in or which state you live in. And we need all political parties to address the systemic inequities that continue to marginalize our community. But let me be clear, our advocacy does not stop with highlighting these commitments. People with disability will continue campaigning to hold all parties and candidates accountable to the promises they make, no matter who wins the election. And this is also where you guys come in. This election is critical for us to secure long overdue commitments to economic security, human rights, and inclusion for people with a disability, especially in the wake of the Royal Commission findings. This week, people with disability will be releasing a community activation kit, which includes a pledge to vote for disability rights, information on contacting your candidates to ask where they stand, and tips for spreading the word through your social media networks. The kit also offers talking points, social media tools, and strategies to make your voice heard. We have an election scorecard, which we will also provide, and it shows how each party is tracking against each of those election priorities that I outlined at the beginning of my speech. It's a good way to keep track on which party to vote for, both in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. Links to all of these resources will be provided by Cerebral Palsy Alliance once we launch them this week. Remember, your preferences matter, and no vote for a minor party is a wasted vote. So number all the boxes in order of your preferences according to how the party or person is tracking against those disability priorities. Don't be afraid to reach out to candidates using the tools we have provided in the kits, and let all of your friends and family know through our social media tools where you stand on disability rights. We are 5 million strong. We are a powerful voting bloc, and we are demanding real action, and together we can make something happen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Steph. That was fantastic. I can't wait to see those resources too when they come out. That's very exciting, because I know it can be very, very difficult to wade through all the policy announcements and policy papers that each party releases. So to have people with Disability Australia to pull that all together and assess that for us and make that much more accessible for us is fantastic. So thank you so much for all the work that you're doing there. Excellent. So all that policy talk has got me needing a trip to the Kingo with the politicians for a beer. But before I get to that, let's move on. Thank you very much, Steph. And over to our next guest, Laura Petanuzzo. Laura is a writer and disability advocate based in Wurundjeri. Sorry, Laura, correct me there if I haven't got that right.
Laura speaking. That's okay. It's Wurundjeri.
Wurundjeri. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Wurundjeri country. She uses her lived experience of cerebral palsy and psychosocial disability as a vehicle to promote disability rights, focusing on the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and disability representation in the media. Her work has been published in places such as the ABC, SBS, Griffith Review, and The Age. She's a member of the minister-appointed Victorian Disability Advisory Council and is a co-editor and contributor of an upcoming anthology of disabled writing from the New South Press. Laura leads CPActive with passion on the CPActive Champions Steering Committee. Laura, other than that Lachlan may send people a fine, I'm joking, it won't be Lachlan, it's the AEC. Why else do we need to use our advocacy to get others to vote?
Laura speaking. Thank you, Luther, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Lockie and Steph. It's an honor to be here. And I just want to acknowledge that, unfortunately, our dear friend Ellie Demarchelia was ill today, so she couldn't make it, but I am here. Yeah, I also just want to reaffirm your acknowledgement from earlier, Luther, and just, yeah, affirm that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land, and extend my solidarity not just to First Nations people in so-called Australia, but also across the world, particularly in Palestine at the moment. And yeah, I guess there are so many reasons that it is absolutely integral and essential for disabled people and our allies to show up at the polls and to vote. And I think a lot of those were outlined extremely eloquently by Steph and by Lockie. And I'd just like to remind everybody of, I think, the really powerful statement that Lachlan made, saying that, you know, voting is a right, yes, but it's also a responsibility. It's our responsibility and our chance to make a real difference and to have our voices heard and to shape the future of this country and the future of disabled people, not just in this country, but also outside of it, because we know that federal policies also shape the experiences of disabled people who migrate here or disabled people who come here seeking asylum. And we know through the principles of disability justice that all of those struggles that we experience as disabled people are interconnected. And none of us is truly free and truly facing a world free of ableism until all of us are. And so, yeah, I just really wanted to emphasize that. But I also really just wanted to, I guess, bring a bit of a, I guess, personal lens to the topic of voting and the upcoming election, because I feel like, I don't know about everybody else, but sometimes this world that we live in can be really overwhelming, and the prospect of voting and I guess trying to sift through all of the information that we're kind of assaulted with in our daily lives and on social media can be a lot. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that, and to acknowledge that by being here tonight, you've all taken the first step in showing up, in demonstrating your commitment to understanding and demystifying the process of voting and the process of this federal election. So first of all, kudos to all of you. Yeah, exactly. Love that, Luther. Auslan applause. And I guess also just to say that, like, when I give, I guess, this personal context, I'm not going to tell you how to vote. That's entirely up to you. But what I do hope, and what I am going to ask you to do, is to reflect on the world that you want to see for disabled people in so-called Australia, and to vote for the party that all of us think will make that world a reality. And just echoing the call there to make sure that we're enrolled to vote by the 7th of April. And I guess the one thing that I really wanted to emphasize, and one of the reasons why it is super important for all of us to show up at the polls, is that our lives as disabled people are inherently political. Like, politics isn't something that we can escape. It's not something that we can afford to just bury our heads in the sand about. We can't afford to waste our vote, because we exist within a web of systems that weren't designed for us. And I'm not telling anyone anything new, because we all live that every single day. We know that we interact with the consequences of our votes each and every day. As Steph outlined, you know, federal politicians and parties decide what happens with the NDIS. And we've seen, you know, major overhauls with that through in the last few years. And that's one really powerful example of how our vote can be really, really influential and can potentially shape the future of the NDIS that we see. But like Steph said, there's also the notion of inclusive and accessible housing. And I figured I would just share a quick anecdote about my recent hunt for accessible housing, and the fact that as a wheelchair user, because I am both a wheelchair user and an NDIS participant, it was frankly exhausting to show up time and time again at inspections after having, you know, called up the real estate agents and said, hello, I'm a wheelchair user. Like, is this place accessible to me? Like, the photos on the websites aren't entirely clear, and to be assured, yep, absolutely, it's totally accessible. And then to show up and to have there be either like a tiny step that the real estate agent would just shrug about and say, oh, it's just a tiny step, or entire flights of stairs, both because of the attitudinal lack of understanding of disability, but also, as Steph highlighted, a lack of consistent construction and building standards across the nation. And so I guess what I reflect on, and what I hope all of us will reflect on through that anecdote, is that our vote has the power to change that. Our vote has the power to make sure that disabled people in the future looking for accessible housing can find that housing, can make sure that they don't have to show up to inspections, to show up to auctions, to show up to real estate agency websites and be faced with a lack of options and be faced with reminders that we don't belong. We can vote for, and by so doing, create a world where we're expected, a world that is designed with us in mind. And yeah, I really just want to affirm that in terms of accessible housing. But I guess I also wanted to talk a little bit about accessible and anti-ableist healthcare systems, kind of along a similar vein. But I know we've all had the experience of seeking healthcare and experiencing maybe an ableist microaggression, or maybe just like, you know, in your face ableism. And I don't know about everybody else, but similar to the whole housing thing, it is just exhausting. And I find myself avoiding healthcare settings as much as I possibly can because I just don't want to deal with it. I want to be able to exist in a healthcare system that is adaptive to the needs of me and people like me. And I recognize that that our votes can actually create a healthcare system that meets those needs. And I just want to acknowledge Justin's comment in the chat. You don't look disabled is one that they get a lot. And oh my God, yes, I get that one a lot too. And I also want to acknowledge Nicholas's comment. Nicholas said that a good tip is to check which electorate you're in, as some boundaries have changed this election. That's a really good point and a really good reminder. Thank you, Nicholas. And yeah, I guess, yeah, just wanting to affirm the fact that all of those instances of ableism and countless others, because I'm sure that, like Justin, you've all got experiences that you could share. All those things, they're political. And we have the opportunity in this election, not just to vote for a party that will advocate for and implement an accessible and inclusive healthcare system, but also, okay, and here I go, everybody. This is like wild pie in the sky, but maybe we'd even get an anti-ableist one. And I mean, like, that's like major blue sky thinking, but I'm daring to dream. And I really hope and I know that, as Steph said, we're 5 million strong, and they can't ignore us if we vote in unison, if we vote collectively. And I believe that we can, and I believe that we will. because we deserve a government that will work towards an NDIS that functions as it was intended to, a government that will fight for safe and accessible and inclusive housing. And beyond all of those things, which frankly are having our human rights upheld, we deserve a government who will recognize and celebrate disability pride. We deserve a government that can act in accordance with the principles of disability justice. And a government can do that by committing to amplifying the needs and voices of the most marginalized in our community, and by funding services and supports that empower us to live our lives in all of their messy, disabled, wonderful glory. And because sometimes it is messy, but it is also absolutely wonderful. And I just want to amplify what Justin has said in the chat. Justin has said, be a voice so loud they can't ignore you. Yes. I feel like I want to put that on a sticky note and like have that just like all over my house, because that just really encapsulates what we're trying to do here. So thank you, Justin. I guess I'm aware that I've rambled for a while because I am very, very passionate, as you can probably all tell. So I just want to wrap up by just, I guess, reiterating the fact that the most powerful action we can all take is to show up at the voting polls. And if we aren't sure how we're going to vote, you know, we can start conversations with the people around us. We can look at the ABC's compass tool, which will actually ask you a series of questions and then show you how your answers align with different political parties. No matter what, it's just important that we show up at the voting booths and the polls, whether we do that from home by voting by post, or whether we vote by a phone, or whether we do that in person. It's important that we do that armed with the knowledge that we're voting for the party and the person whose values are most closely aligned with our own. Because every single disabled person in Australia and in the world needs your vote. And I'm saying that because disabled votes change the world. They already have, and they will again. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was so well said. And I think the theme I'm hearing tonight over and over again from Laura's stories and from both Lachlan and Steph as well is that you may be one vote in millions, but that one vote really matters. It matters a lot. So thank you very much to all of our guests. I would now like to invite our speakers into a panel. So in this panel, it will give everyone here a chance to do a bit of a Q&A with our guests. So if you have any questions you would like to ask any of our guests, please pop those in the chat and the operations team will assist me in getting those questions to our guests. We also collected a few of those questions through the registration as well. Also, if we don't get to your question, please fill out, there'll be a link to a feedback form. Please fill that out and you can pop some questions in there and we'll get those to the guests as well, so you can get answers to those if you would like. You can also raise your hand and come off mute when we ask for you to come off mute, and be able to ask questions that way as well. So however works best for you. So without much further ado, I will move on to some of the questions we've got here from the registration forms. Excellent. Let's start off with Lockie. You were the first to speak, so we'll give you the first question. Phone vote, this is one from a CPActive member. Phone voting is available for people who are blind or have low vision. Why does this not extend to people with other disabilities, e.g. cerebral palsy, that prevent them from writing? I would like to exercise my right to a secret ballot, but I can't because I have to get someone else to write for me. Is there some way we could advocate for this kind of change?
Thank you. I think that is a wonderful question, and I think it's definitely an area that we the reality could look at the video election. I totally understand that position. I know that, like, for me, one of my family members helped the last election wasn't able to write, and that presented difficulty. So basically telephone voting is a pretty new thing for us, and we'll be looking at ways to make sure voting is more accessible in the future. But I'll definitely raise that internally.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lockie. Now, Nicholas, you have a question about the teals that Steph might be able to help us answer. Are you happy to come off mute and share that question with us?
Yeah. I'm from a electorate where we got teal independent. But I haven't quite heard a lot of policy regarding disability policy from them. So I was wondering if you have any policy relation to disability from the teal independent platform.
I thought that question was going to come to me. So the reason I didn't talk about it in my little speech is because the teals and Climate 200 aren't aligned. So they vary seat by seat. So it will depend on what seat you're in. So some of them are for disability issues and have been quite vocal on them. For example, Monique Ryan was very anti the NDIS reforms. And Zali Segel, Monique Ryan, and Zoe Daniel were aligned with the Raise the Rate. But my best advice, if you have a current teal, go to theyvoteforyou.org.au to see their voting record, because you'll be able to, I'll put that in the chat, because you'll be able to see what they have voted for with the cost of living relief and other disability policy. And then use our toolkit that we provide to write them a letter, ring them, and directly ask the candidate, which is why that is so important, that direct engagement with the candidate, because they will vary seat by seat, unfortunately, especially with a lot of new ones coming in.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Steph. I have a question here for you, Laura. What would you like to say to people with a disability who feel like they're not informed? And can you recommend any resources to help them find information on how to vote? I mean, as in which party to vote for.
Laura speaking. Yeah, absolutely. I guess in terms of people who feel like they aren't informed, first of all, it's okay. And it's not too late to get informed. So yeah, I would just encourage them to take that first step. It might be by like following politicians or political parties on social media, or it might be by using a resource like the ABC Compass tool. But there are ways, and also it doesn't have to be, if the prospect of getting informed feels really overwhelming, that's okay. You can take it at your own pace. There's no like pass or fail here. It's just you doing your best in the way that you can, and accessing information in the way that works best for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Laura. So I now have a question going back to Lockie about voting, and actually any of our guests if they want to, but we'll start with you, Lockie. Tell us a little bit about the difference as a resident political scientist. Tell us a bit about the difference between the House of Representatives and the Senate, and why there's two different votes for these two different spaces.
Thank you. Great question. So our parliament operates with what's called a bicameral system, which means there's two houses, and the Senate is the House of Review, and the House of Representatives is where legislation is typically introduced. So, the main thing Parliament does is deal with legislation. So, having both houses means that there's that extra component of reviewing legislation. And yeah, so basically, the House of Representatives is where government is formed and where the Prime Minister is normally, and then the Senate is there to provide further review.
I might also
Sorry, thanks, Steph.
I'll just jump in a little bit quickly. So even if one of the major parties wins the election and they have the majority in the lower house, if they don't have the majority in the Senate, they can't pass anything, which means they'll have to go to the Greens or the other side or the Teals or One Nation or whoever to be able to compromise and to be able to pass legislation. And that's the great way that if the Greens in the last parliament got some things through, like social and affordable housing and some other climate change measures. So it is super important that you number those preferences in who you want to see win a seat in the Senate.
Great, thank you very much. Just very quickly, I know I'm rapidly running out of time, but one last question on the technical voting front, and I think, Lockie, your recommendation to practice was a great idea, but tell us, and any of the guests can do this, but I feel like, Lockie, this is another one for you, sorry. Tell us a bit about voting above the line and below the line. No pressure, you've got 2 minutes.
Thanks, Oliver. So, in the House of Representatives, you've only got the one option. You need to number every box. But in the Senate, the ballot paper's a bit more complicated. So the Senate ballot paper has two parts, and there's a line in the middle separating them. Above the line, you have all the different parties or grouped candidates, and you only have to number one box per party in order of your preference. I think you only need to number 6, but you can number more, whereas below the line you're voting for individual candidates. And I'm pretty sure if you're voting below the line, you need to number 12. I might have that wrong though. But basically you can either vote above or below the line in the Senate. You can't do both.
Excellent. Thank you, Lockie. And I see Steph's just come through there. So it's 6 above and 12 below for the Senate. So excellent. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining this evening, and to our fantastic speakers for sharing their lived experience and a phenomenal knowledge of voting at federal elections. It's really meant a lot that you've taken the time to come and talk to us and share some information and experience, some of your experiences with us. I believe that there will be a link coming into the chat shortly, which will take you through to a form to provide feedback on this lived experience lab, or any questions that you didn't get a chance to answer in the ask in the session. But again, really thank you very, very much to our wonderful guests. I'm going to give you a round of applause, even though it's going to sound like I'm the only one clapping. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Have a fantastic evening. And I'm sure I'll see many of you again soon. See you. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.